Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. This week we are back talking about paw cleaning and training paw wiping again. But this week we're focusing on hind paws, which are a little bit tougher to teach your dog how to wipe on their own. So today we'll be talking about how to get that started. All right, let's jump into the slides. Part two, hind paws. All right, so if you have any questions during our little presentation today, please just jump in and comment under wherever you're watching the video, and I'll get those questions. All right, here we go. So we're going to first talk about just general ways or options of how to get that hind paw wiping motion started. It can be a lot tougher than getting the front paws going. I'll give you some examples of how to use food lures and props like toys to get the hind paw wiping motion started. And then I'll give you one example of how I faded out a toy prop or prompt so that I didn't have to keep using the toy to get my dog to move their back paws. All right, so this is from a review from 2 weeks ago. The big picture of training wiping your paws. First, you got to get some of that wiping movement somehow. Same with back paws as it is for front paws. Once you've got that wiping motion, you want to both increase the number of wipes per treat, usually, and you'll also want to transfer the training to all the contexts in which you need it in. So anywhere you want your dog to wipe their paws, you'll want to practice. All right, so how can we get those hind paws going? Well, one thing we can do is capture ground scratching type movements when they occur sort of naturally in your dog's life. So one time some dogs tend to do this is after they're out and they do their business, and they'll kick their back legs. I have a quick video. Let me find it. Mostly, this is just an excuse to show a hilarious video, but here's an example of Pancake doing his post-poop paw wiping. Super funny. And so what I could do is wait for that to happen. And then by capturing, I just mean try to reinforce it when it happens so you get more of it. And then you can try to get it on cue and get it to happen in other contexts where you want paw wiping. Another way that, let me go forward here. So you do get that wiping motion right away if you do this. Another context in which you might get this kind of back paw wiping against the ground motion happening in regular life is if your dog has one of those like happy spots that if you scratch, they start kicking their back paw. You can try that and see when they're standing up, if you do that, if they kind of end up scraping the ground with their back paw, then that might be another option. A way to get the motion so you can reinforce it and then move on from there. The downside of capturing that kind of ground scratching, like I just showed you with Pancake, is one, some dogs don't do it at all, so you won't be able to use it, or they do it pretty rarely. I actually didn't go over an example of this today with my own dogs because two of my dogs do this, one doesn't at all, and the two that do, they might do it once a day max, and I won't always be there to catch it, so it was kind of an inefficient way for me to train this. And it can be difficult to transfer to the context you need. So even if you start trying to reinforce your dog doing that kicking of the ground after they poop or something out on a walk, getting it on cue so you can get them to do it in just at home, not after they went to the bathroom can be kind of tricky, especially for, if you're not a professional dog trainer. It's kind of difficult. So not my favorite option, but I did want to mention it because if it does work for you, it could be a quick, easy way to get to capture that paw wiping motion with the hind paws. All right. You can also train back up or walk backwards. That can be a way to get your dog wiping their back paws. I like this one because it's pretty easy to get it started in training. It can be an easy thing to lure or prompt. You will have to watch your dog's back paws, which can be a little bit sort of awkward mechanically, trying to see your dog's back paws while you're, say, have a food lure up at the front end of them. But you do want to watch for back paw movements that are more sliding along a mat or the ground, whatever, and less lifting. Some dogs will do the sliding of their paws more than others. And so if your dog does big paw lifts when they walk backward, either this might not be a good option or just might be more work for you to sort of shape the dragging of those back feet back along the ground rather than lifting them up. You can also try to lure the dog up something angled, that's kind of at a steep angle, so that they try to climb up it and then they put their back foot up, say on an angled mat, and then it slides back down because of, gravity. If you look on YouTube for examples of training a dog to use a nail board with their back paws, you'll see a bunch of examples of this, and I have a video example today. So this is one possibility. This is, again, a way where you can get that wiping motion right away because the back paw basically falls down to the ground along the mat or along whatever you have angled up, so you get wiping. What I don't love about it is, one, it can be kind of awkward to try to do with larger dogs. I tried it with all 3 of my dogs to work out some logistics, and with Pancake, it wasn't too difficult, but with my larger dogs, me trying to get my hand and my treat up high enough for them to be forced, basically, to get their back paws up on something was kind of tough. And my nail board isn't so big that it was easy to do that. So just a heads up that if with bigger dogs, this is a little bit more difficult. And if you've got dogs who have any hind end weakness, hip issues, whatever, they'll be putting their weight up all on their back feet, and that can be uncomfortable. So that might slow down your training and might make it a bad option for you if you have a dog with rear end discomfort of any kind. All right, let's talk about getting backing up. There are a lot of ways to train this. The most common way probably I've seen is someone walking into the dog or kind of leaning over them. And then, that's kind of uncomfortable for the dog, so they back up and then they reinforce that behavior. The trainer reinforces that behavior. I prefer not to do it this way, particularly because we primarily work with fearful dogs. And so adding something that's uncomfortable to them in their environment doesn't really help us achieve our bigger picture goals. But there are some other ways we can do it. One is, again, we can capture, which just means try to reinforce situations in which they normally back up just in their day-to-day lives. So for example, your dog may have learned that if they crowd the back door or the fridge door, say, because they want you to open it, when you open it, it will come toward them and they'll have to back up. And so some dogs will automatically, or they've learned, if you start to reach for that door that they want to go out, they'll back up on their own a couple steps. And that's a situation in which you could, say yes or click, give them a treat, do that repeatedly to try to reinforce backing up, and then you can fade out the door opening. Playing tug. Playing tug might be a tougher one. The tug toy and the tug game might be a slightly tougher sort of prompt to fade out, but you could do it. A lot of dogs, they're usually trying to pull the toy back away from you, so they will be doing some backing up. That's another way you could capture it. Many dogs that are really ball crazy love fetch. You might have a dog like this. If you pick up the ball like you're going to throw it, or if they drop it in front of you, a lot of times they'll scoot back in anticipation of the ball being thrown behind them. That's another place where you could wait till they back up, say yes or click, and give them a treat. Try to increase the frequency of that behavior. Let's see, I think I've got a video of that. Okay, yeah, this is actually just a stock video, but yep, this dog is like scooting back, wants you to throw the ball. That's a situation in which you could capture backing up and reinforce it. Let's see. Sorry, this is going longer than I thought it would. All right. Some behaviors that you may have already trained might involve some backing up, even if that wasn't sort of something you consciously or trained on purpose. I noticed that my dog Jasper, when he wipes I trained him to wipe his front paws, and when he wipes, say, his front right paw, he often scoots his back left paw back. And so that was one place I looked at and said, oh, I'll see if I can't reinforce this. You'll see he just, he's going to scratch his front right and he scoots his back left paw back. And so that's one way I can right away get and reinforce pushing a back paw back along the mat. Okay, let's look at food lure options for getting back paw wiping started. And this is, again, via training backing up and then watching for those backing up instances in which the dog is doing more of the sort of dragging their paw along the mat versus lifting and stepping. So you can push or toss a food lure between front paws. And I just want to pause and mention that. So because we mostly work with fearful dogs, and in general, we don't like to add unpleasantness to a dog's environment. There's already usually enough of that for most of our fearful dogs already. I don't like to take a food lure and kind of push it right at the dog's face. That could be kind of scary for a lot of our fearful pups. And so you only want to do this with a dog who's already very comfortable following a food lure. And you'll notice in all of the video examples, I have the food lure below the nose level. So I'm not pushing it like into their face. I'm going lower. And then I want them backing up because they're trying to follow the food and not because they're trying to get away from my hand. So there, Jasper just scooted his back paws back to get the food. Here's an example with our little tripod. And you notice I'm luring him forward before starting the motion. And you get some nice scooting of the back paws back there. I did want to mention that the lower you hold that food lure, the more likely it is you're going to get a down on the mat if your dog already has a down and maybe was taught with a food lure held low to the ground. And so here in these first two examples with Pancake, you'll see I have the food lure up a little higher, like a few inches off the ground, and that worked fine. But you'll see in this last example, after this one, I have it lower and I do get more of a kind of bow, like he was about to go into a down there, which might be counterproductive for your purposes. And you can also just toss a food lure, which might be better for some dogs who don't want to follow your hand or seem uncomfortable with that. So I just tossed that back between Juno's back paws and she backed up to get it. All right, and finally, there are certainly more ways than this, by the way. And if anyone has a way that they taught their dog to back up that they love or to wipe their back paws, by all means, share it. I'd love to hear what worked for you. You can also use a toy instead of food in your hand or tossed food. And that's what I did with Pancake. I showed you guys this a little bit 2 weeks ago. Pancake likes this treat puzzle ball. And when it gets stuck in a corner, he goes up on his hind legs. He uses his front paw to reach and try to like pry the toy out of the corner. And that's one way I could get him to start doing front paw wiping motion, because he kind of reaches out and then pulls back with his front paw. I also was able to leverage this to get him to move his back paws, because as he gets the toy out of the corner, when he's still up on his hind feet, as it comes toward him, he then scoots his back feet back so he can continue to move the toy out of the corner. And so what I did here is put food in there is food in this toy. And I was moving it, put it close to him, but holding it still so it kind of simulates that stuck toy. When he starts to paw it, I move it toward him a little bit like it would if he were actually freeing it from the corner. And then when he scoots his back feet back, I say yes and reinforce. So there, we've got both his back paws moving backwards along the mat. It was really hot this day, so I can't keep this short. All right, and the last way I mentioned to get hind paw wiping is to lure the dog up an angled mat. So I'll show you a quick example of how this works. I did not particularly like this method, but I'll show you how it might work for you. So here I have the mat up. I actually have it over our nail filing board for the dogs. propped against my feet and my knees. And I have treats up in my lap. And so if Pancake wants to get those treats, he needs to get a little higher than he can get with his back paws on the ground. So there you see how he put his back paw up and then it drags down the mat. So there's our wiping motion. And then you could slowly decrease the angle of the mat and fade out the food lure. All right, so those are some ways to get that back paw wiping motion started. I wanted to give one example of how you can fade out a prop or a prompt. And so I have the toy example here I used for Pancake. So I started by using that food puzzle ball to get his back paws moving, as you saw in the last video. I then repeated the same training step, but with a smaller ball. And then I went to a flat-ish plastic toy that was smaller yet. Then I went to a folded fleece square. And this will make sense. I'll show you the video in a second. I needed another step in here. I didn't initially plan to use a smaller fleece square, but I ended up needing to. So tiny fleece square, then my hand in a fist, then a single finger, and finally I just tapped my finger to get him to do the pawing motion and sliding his back paws back. So what that looked like is, okay, so as a reminder, here's where we started. We had this food puzzle toy that he paws with his front paws, and then as I move it toward him, he scoots his back paws back. And now here's a smaller ball. This was a cooler day. It was a little nicer. Oops, I seem to have missed a step, but okay. Well, there was I may have this clip somewhere out of order, but I had a white flat plastic toy, and then here is a, which didn't show up, and here's a fleece square, and then a fist, and then my finger moving toward him, and then I got to the point where I would just tap and he would do the motion. So that's just a really quick overview of how you might fade out a prompt or a prop like a toy. All right, so take-home points. One thing you might want to do before you embark on this training is just observe your dog for a few days carefully and look for contexts in which he or she already backs up or slides their rear paws back. If they're already doing it and it's something that you can leverage in training, that'll speed things up for you. So for instance, we talked about dogs who do that ground scraping after they poop, or dogs who kick when you scratch a certain area, and can you use that to get their back paws going? Or backing up away from a door was another one, or backing up in anticipation for a tossed ball. However you do it, you'll capture. If you're going to observe and wait for them to do it on their own, you'll capture it. You'll mark it in some way, say yes or click, give them a treat, try to get it to happen more often. Or you can use a food lure. And the ways that worked for me to use a food lure, again, were to kind of either slide the food lure slowly back between their front paws, or to toss it in that direction, or a food toy like I used with Pancake, because I knew he was already likely to use his paws with that. So get that wiping started somehow, and those are some ways to do it. And then eventually you're going to want to phase out your food lures or your props so that they're just doing the wiping motion on the mat for whatever cue you would like to use. All right, folks, that is it for this week. I hope this was helpful, and I would love to hear if you try any of these or come up with something of your own. I'd love to see how people are getting those back paws moving. Please do check out our blog if you're looking for free resources, Instagram channel, our YouTube channel. Don't forget about our Facebook business page and free support group. That's the second Facebook link there. And if you're looking for a little bit more feedback and help with your own training, our monthly training membership is a good affordable option for that kind of thing. And that's that last link there on the slide. Okay, I do not see any questions, so I will let you go until next week. Everyone have a great week. And like I said, do shoot us a message or a video you can share on our business page if you do try some back paw wiping training and have success. All right, everyone, I'll see you next week.